Butte, Montana, the richest hill on earth. 90 years ago, Butte stood as the most prosperous city in Montana and one of the most powerful cities in the Northwest.
At one time, Butte did control the whole state and had a lot to do with politics at the highest level in the country. But things have changed now. We no longer are the largest city in the state. We no longer have the political power like we used to.
Today, times have changed, and the city that once staked its entire economic identity on mining is now rapidly scrambling towards diversification.
We have to survive, so we're not afraid to take some risks and to think outside the box, to do some things that are not what people call ordinary.
Examining the city's history since the early 1980s reveals a tale of desperate times and rough prospects. But Butte people will hear nothing of that.
Butte was founded by optimists. Who else in their right mind would have built beautiful, ornate buildings on the top of the most remote crest in North America, the coldest, bleakest place on the planet? They built this city and they had great faith in the future then, and their descendants are as adamant about the future as they were.
In the next hour, you will get a look at an economy in transition. You will meet young people who have decided to make their homes and careers in Butte.
I do like Butte and I don't mind staying.
You will meet people dedicated to reclaiming and rebuilding the city's prosperity.
Butte has all the comforts that a city needs. You know, there's jobs here, there's restaurants, there's places to live. It's a great place.
From efforts to completely transform Butte to the slow development of new industries, you will see how a city marred by economic and environmental blight is refusing to give up and beginning to show signs of recovery. As Butte forges into the 21st century, what was once an old mining town has no choice but to change. And the rebirth is beginning now.
This University of Montana Radio Television Department production is made possible with support from the University of Montana, where the discovery continues.
For an entry fee of $2, visitors to Butte are encouraged to visit here, the deepest body of contaminated water in Montana. This is the Berkeley Pit, and it epitomizes the environmental legacy of more than 100 years of mining. At approximately 900 feet deep and loaded with traces of heavy metals from its days as an open pit mine, the pit is part of the largest Superfund site in the country. Yet, despite its environmental and health dangers, the pit is now one of the city's biggest draws, and since the mid-90s has greatly contributed to the city's goal of a larger tourism economy.
We had between 25,000 and 30,000 visitors at the Berkeley Pit in about a 3-month period. It's the #1 tourist attraction, not only in Butte, but probably in southwestern Montana.
It is surprising how many people want to see the Berkeley Pit. It's very unique. There's not very many sites in the world where you see this kind of large-scale mining that did occur.
Today, the Environmental Protection Agency closely monitors the pit to make sure its toxic waters don't reach the groundwater.
Berkeley is very complicated in the fact that it acts like a bathtub. The groundwater from the Butte Hill migrates towards the Berkeley. And as long as we keep the water in the Berkeley below the alluvial groundwater system, it will stay in the Berkeley Pit. Once it reaches what we call the critical water level, that water could start to move into the alluvial aquifer and to Silver Bow Creek.
100 years ago, Butte's priorities did not include considering the negative environmental and economic impacts mining would have on the city's future. By the turn of the 20th century, Butte, Montana had become one of the nation's true boomtowns. The Butte Hills' rich copper deposits, mined under the control of the newly formed Anaconda Copper Mining Company, brought untold financial and cultural wealth to the city.
I think the most prosperous year in Butte was 1915 and 1920. It was during World War I. Copper was in demand here. It was a copper camp. Every bullet shot in World War I had an ounce of copper, which was mined in Butte. We had a population close to 100,000 people. We had over 19 different nationalities here. The town boomed at that time. A lot of construction. It was a wide open town.
It was a place where anybody who wanted work had it, and there were a lot of people who came from, the trains were running all the time. It brought people from all over the world, so there were different faiths, different outlooks. Millionaires were here, so they could bring the entertainment. Charlie Chaplin would be playing at the theater. They could bring the best in food. They could bring the best architects. Whatever they wanted, they got in the 1920s. And if you've ever been to Fifth Avenue in New York City, Manhattan, or other large cities, that's what Butte was like.
To meet the needs of some 20,000 miners, small businesses cropped up and thrived all across the city. In 1917, one former Butte miner, Clarence Miller, opened a small boot repair shop near the uptown area. Miller was determined to start a new career after narrowly surviving the worst hard rock mining disaster in the nation's history.
Him and his two brothers were underground miners, and they worked at the Granite Mountain Mine, and they were three of the lucky ones that got out during the speculator fire. And they decided they weren't never going to go underground again. And so Clarence came here and opened up the store, which at that time in 1917 was doing mostly saddlery and tack and leather repair and shoe repair.
At that time, the demand for service industries, including boot and shoe stores, grew tremendously, and most businesses were always open.
A lot of businesses were open 24 hours a day. You know, your grocery stores, casinos, bars, restaurants were all open 24 hours a day for the miners on their shift work. And so there was about 22 shoe repair shops in Butte. There was probably another 12 or 15 shoe stores in Butte selling shoes.
But times would soon change for the Miller repair shop and small business alike. The unprecedented mining boom leading up to the 1920s would just as quickly run into problems and begin to lose steam. Labor unrest plagued Butte throughout the 20s and 30s. Many jobs were lost, and following a temporary resurgence during World War II, the demand for copper began to drop. Interest in Butte started to wane.
Many people over the years from the 50s, 60s, 70s started to leave Butte. Actually, many people departed Butte in the 40s. You know, I think when you grew up in Butte, many of the old miners didn't want their children to work in the mines. The mines were not exactly a good place to work.
By the 50s, underground mining had become too labor-intensive, so the Anaconda Company started open pit mining, which led to the creation of the Berkeley Pit. To make room for open pit mining, the company bought up and leveled entire neighborhoods on Butte's once prosperous east side. But that wasn't all they sought to do.
There was an effort by the Anaconda Company to move Butte, the uptown area, to the flat, to the valley below. And so there was pressure being put on the property owners to accept settlements so they'd move the whole town and they could expand the Berkeley Pit. They would have knocked down all the buildings, relocated all the businesses, and they had a huge plan called Butte Forward. And that would have relocated all the businesses down in a different area, and it would have then just opened it up to mining all the way across. What kind of resolved that ultimately was the fact that Anaconda Company had a lot of investment in Chile. They had mines as much or more in Chile as they did in Butte. And when Salvador Allende nationalized the mines in Chile, that took all the value of the investment that the Anaconda Company had and gave it to the state in Chile. So they were forced to consider selling, which they did. They went out of business.
As a result of President Allende's socialist government in Chile, the Anaconda Company was forced to merge with the Atlantic Richfield Company in 1977.
ARCO bought the Anaconda Company and all its assets, tried operating the mine from '78, and finally in 1983 decided that they just couldn't do it.
From the beginning, ARCO seemed ill-prepared to run an already struggling business fraught with labor strife.
I think there's other people that can make a better go out of mining than ARCO has proven so far in their venture here.
smelters closed in Anaconda and Great Falls, and by 1983 all mining operations ceased in Butte. The industry that had defined the city was gone, and the jobless rate exploded to 17%.
When the company announced that they were going to shut down the mining in Butte, it was devastating to the community. It was probably going to put in the neighborhood of 5,000 people out of work.
It's pretty bleak. People, who had been accustomed to having a large company employing a lot of people, all of a sudden that went away, and a lot of people they knew moved out of town.
It was like losing a member of your family. There was a lot of head shaking and a lot of people in disbelief, in denial. I know that there, for many, many years, people thought that Anaconda Company was coming back, that Santa Claus was going to reappear and everything was going to be fine again. Just wasn't there. Just wasn't going to happen.
And so it was a devastating blow to the community. But as Butte has always done, we band together and said that it isn't the end of our community. So it was time for us to reinvent ourselves and look at mining as not such a mainstay of our community, and what other things could we do.
By the mid-'80s, Butte faced an uphill battle economically, and the population dropped below 40,000. As city leaders brainstormed the city's economic future, Butte citizens yearned for a morale booster. Enter Our Lady of the Rockies.
Our Lady of the Rockies was a great project that was thought up originally by a man who wanted to honor his wife who was ill, and he prayed, and he decided he would build a statue. He told God he would do that. And somewhere along the line, he started talking to his friends, and the Butte psyche took over, which is do things in a big way, whether you really should or not.
What began as a small statue in a yard quickly became the makings of a gigantic 90-foot rendering of the Virgin Mary that would rest atop Butte's East Ridge. After nearly 6 years of work, the statue was completed in December 1985.
When they put the statue up on top of the hill, everybody in the community, it stopped for a day and a half, and everybody watched them erect this statue up in 5 or 6 pieces up on the Continental Divide. And after that, you know that there was a little better feeling in the community.
I remember when 20 years ago when the lady first went up there, it really changed Butte. You know, the mines were closing and Butte was down at the time. And I think that that statue turned Butte around a lot and gave a lot of people hope, and it's been a pretty neat deal over the years.
Aside from boosting morale, the community hoped the statue would attract tourism and bring some much-needed revenue. Unfortunately, the service road constructed to bring tourists up to the lady could only remain open about 3 months of the year. It seemed that, for the time being, the tourist boom would have to wait. One of the few bright spots Butte had throughout the 80s and 90s was the Montana Power Company. Owned by the Anaconda Company, Montana Power was formed in 1912 as a merger of small hydroelectric outfits. Over the next 50 years, while the Anaconda Company struggled with the ups and downs of mining, the small energy company expanded. The 1970s energy crisis put a financial strain on Montana Power, but the company still remained Butte's largest employer throughout the 1980s.
If you talk to a lot of Butte people, a place that they really wanted to work in our community was Montana Power. And it was interesting, a lot of people would call it the power. The corporate offices were here, there were a lot of opportunities. So it was a place that I always wanted to work.
Paul Babb, Butte's current chief executive, did eventually find work with Montana Power when he joined Touch America, a telecommunications subsidiary the company bought in 1990.
And when I started at Touch America, very small employee base, very aggressive in how we marketed our products in the telecommunications area. It was a very well-run business.
After a few years, Montana Power executives decided that the telecommunications industry was the future of the company.
They sold off the most profitable part of their company, which was the generation business. That was the first thing to go. And then they decided to get out of the pipes and wire business, so they exited the utility. And then they put all those dollars into Touch America.
When they sold the generation and took the assets from that sale and put all those assets into Touch America and invested immense amounts of money into fiber optic construction, fiber optic equipment. Everybody was on the same bandwagon at that time. Fiber optic was going to be the one panacea that everybody was going to make it rich on. And it didn't happen.
And Touch America was such a small telecommunications company that Quest and the big companies just ate us up.
Touch America, which by 2001 had been made the parent company and Montana Power its subsidiary, was forced to sell and laid off virtually all of its employees, including Bab.
I was fired along with 60 other people via email. And we knew that the layoffs were coming, but no one would have ever dreamt that you would get fired with an email that you would show up at your desk, and that if you got this email, you pretty much packed your bags and out the door you went.
No severance package, no nothing. They just told everybody to get the hell out.
It was a terrible thing for the community because what it did was put a lot of people that were earning good salaries, very good salaries, out of jobs, and they were scrambling to support their families. A lot of the elderly and former Montana Power employees that were retired lost huge amounts of their savings.
Montana Power's departure, coupled with the Anaconda Company's departure almost 20 years earlier, left the Butte people in quite a bind.
Nobody ever in their wildest dreams ever thought that those entities with the motherhood of Butte's economy would ever not be there. And so when they weren't, we were kind of left wondering what's our future.
For Jim Smitham and the local development corporation, discovering Butte's future became about rebuilding the economy slowly, attracting one small business at a time. In 2001, a group of out-of-state developers interested in bringing a meat processing business to Butte visited the city. Once they did, they came up with a new idea.
It wasn't 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks later, they called us back and they said, we've got some ideas we want to run by you. And they came up with this idea about trying to create another Branson, Missouri type of development.
The proposal was called Destination Montana.
Originally, it was music halls uptown. They were going to build, I think, 6 music halls uptown and cater to the performers of the 60s.
But the idea grew beyond that. They also wanted to bring large-scale open gambling to the uptown area and build a high-altitude training facility to house an NFL training camp, as well as 3 PGA golf courses. Butte jumped at the proposal.
I thought it was a great idea, and I knew we had an uphill battle as far as the state of Montana concerned, as far as opening up gaming.
The developers said the project could only go through if the open gaming aspect was preserved.
So we put together legislation that would have created a gambling district in uptown Butte. We thought that Montana probably wasn't ready for open gambling as a state, but if we could sell it on the fact that it was just a confined area of uptown Butte, that it might have a chance of passing.
The legislation was shot down by a mere 13 votes in the 2003 session, and Destination Montana was shelved. The reaction around Butte was mixed.
Quite frankly, it probably grew to a size that maybe scared some people, because it was a pretty big development at the end. You know, they're talking a couple billions of dollars worth of investment in the community.
If Destination Montana would have happened, if the legislature would have approved open gambling in Butte, the work would have just begun then, because there would have been a huge effort to try to protect what we have and to make sure it wasn't totally transformed. What was predicted was a huge influx of like 24-hour-a-day traffic, people driving in to gamble, and it was a lot of what-if scenarios that were pretty scary to people who were living in a town with 39,000 people, but at the same time it was very exciting, thinking that there'd be a lot of money.
I think we would have ended up with a lot of bad element here, and we'd lose our character and lose everything else. There'd be a lot of low income paying jobs, and I just think that we would lose our identity. That's what I thought would happen. It would turn into a big Las Vegas atmosphere or a big casino atmosphere. And I was totally against all of that.
Destination Montana was going to help Butte. And I'm for anything that helps the community.
For now, there are no plans to develop similar projects in Butte. Destination Montana has become viewed as a learning experience.
It was quite an adventure. It was quite an exercise. It just maybe probably grew beyond its original size and maybe kind of imploded on us.
Other ways to revolutionize the uptown area and Butte in general have been more successful than Destination Montana. A careful look at uptown Butte over the last few years reveals a curious pattern. Small, high-tech software companies are popping up at every turn.
The strategy has been to try to attract high-tech firms that don't necessarily have to be located in a place. They could just as easily be in Silicon Valley or in Butte, Montana. With the web, the World Wide Web, you don't have to be located in Silicon Valley to serve a market there. You don't have to have offices right next to your clients. Your office is your computer.
The local development corporation first started to actively pursue high-tech industry in Butte following the arrival of ASME, or Advanced Silicon Materials, in 1996. Today, ASME is the world's largest supplier of silane gas and produces some of the world's highest quality silicon.
ASME it's a great success for Butte. It benefited the entire state, about 1,000, 1,200 construction jobs to build this huge plant just west of the city. At the same time, it was slightly disappointing. A lot of people were speculating on real estate, thinking that there were going to be a lot of employees that came with it, and there were a lot. Actually, it was about 200 jobs. Same time, we lost Beale Mountain, which is a mine over by Anaconda, and we lost about 200 jobs. So it ended up becoming a wash in terms of employment.
But high-tech jobs continue to grow now in the uptown area, where the existing infrastructure provides a perfect fit for small software firms.
If you go through uptown Butte, a lot of the buildings are multiple story. They've got unique architectural designs to them. The main floor, the first floor, is usually retail. Second and third floors are in many cases vacant. So there's a lot of potential office space that could be developed up there at low cost.
One software company that has thrived is Synesys 7, a startup that specializes in developing text reading software for converting technical manuals from paper to electronic format. When Synesys 7 first came to Butte in 2003, they occupied a single floor in the uptown's historic Thornton building. Today, they have expanded to a much larger space, where they focus primarily on a contract from the U.S. Navy and the Naval Air Warfare Systems Group, or NAVAIR.
NAVAIR personnel have been pretty impressed with what we've been able to pull off for them and getting ready to deliver for them. It provides a technology that, in theory, has not been done by anybody else or couldn't figure out quite how to do.
While the Navy contract has sustained the company since its inception, Synesys 7's success with electronic conversion has led to additional contracts from the National Guard and the state of Montana. Their spring 2006 employee base of 23 is expected to grow significantly in the coming years, bringing more good-paying jobs into the community.
Bringing in high-tech changes the face of Butte in terms of it's a different type of skill set that comes in. What we pay engineers and software developers as opposed to, say, a retail business, it just has a higher pay. So the expenditure of that money and the way that it churns through the economy is very high.
Mississippi native Wes Mosby came to Synesys 7 in 2004, having never experienced Montana.
How long would I like to stay in Butte? I'd like to stay as long as possible, as long as opportunity is here. Hopefully be able to grow and move up the ladder, but I like Butte. I try to hike up the East Ridge every morning. I have a mountain 5 minutes outside my door. It's pretty nice.
Software allows people to be in disparate places, like the telecommuters who can work from home. It allows it to be here, and by having some of the things that are attractive, in terms of the cost of living, the environment, the activities that are made available here, that is like the carrot for attracting people into this town.
And while Butte provides an attractive location for software developers, high-tech industry provides for Butte a welcome and clean alternative to mining.
When we look at like high-tech industry, I would like to say that we're a non-polluting industry. You know, it's pretty much software development right now, or engineering services, or management services.
Mining has, however, managed to retain a presence in Butte, albeit a considerably smaller one. In late 1986, after 3 years of suspended mining operations, the local government arranged a partnership between ARCO and Montana construction magnate Dennis Washington to form a new operation, Montana Resources, or MRI. MRI has maintained a steady workforce of about 300 employees since 1986, specializing in molybdenum and copper extraction.
Right now, they're doing super. Copper's at an all-time high. They've got long-term contracts, and they're doing very well. The mine has about another between 16 and 20 years with the identified ore bodies that they have right now, and they're even doing some exploration work starting this summer to identify other ore bodies in the area. So it's encouraging.
While MRI has been a saving grace economically for Butte, the presence of mining continues to raise environmental concerns for the community.
Well, I do believe that activities associated with mining have become more environmentally friendly, but when you're moving this kind of dirt, there are always going to be problems. You are always going to have health and environmental problems associated with mining.
Unlike the Anaconda Company, MRI's system does not discharge any material into Silverbow Creek, which has been a tremendous help to the EPA. And since Butte became classified as a Superfund site in 1983, the EPA and ARCO, which inherited the Anaconda Company's environmental liabilities, have invested hundreds of millions of dollars into cleanup efforts. These investments have been a boon to the local labor and local economy since the mid-'80s.
Just on the Butte Hill itself, we've conducted about $60 million of construction activities over a period of since 1988. And when you think about $60 million, that is a lot of money going into the community. Most of the work has been done by local contractors, hiring local men to do that work.
And plus what it's done is there's been some other environmental engineering firms that have prospered because of it. We've got some great ones here now that are expanding their operations, and they started with helping ARCO in various subcontracts. It's a kind of a experiment through, it's a laboratory, I guess you'd call it, for environmental cleanup, because we've got all kinds of it to work on. But it's coming along. We're no longer, just considered a wasteland.
But the city still recognizes the apprehension people may have in moving to the community, given the Superfund designation.
Butte is always going to have the Berkeley Pit. There are always going to be remnants of mining in this area. But the state of Montana and Butte needs to do a better job in communicating that, yes, we are a Superfund site, but we have worked many years in addressing the health and environmental issues. And yes, there's going to be continuing work for many years to come, but that Butte is a safe place to live.
One entity that has both benefited from the Superfund cleanup and been an economic asset itself is Butte's small but world-renowned engineering school, Montana Tech. What started as a mining school with about 40 students has today grown to more than 2,000 students and 30 degree programs, including business and nursing schools. In spring 2005, the business school conducted a study of the university's economic impact on Butte. They found that direct spending by Montana Tech in the local economy is estimated at $3.4 million a year. Tech students spend about $31.5 million a year. And the analysis estimates that Montana Tech has a direct economic impact of more than $74 million on the local economy, resulting in the creation of more than 740 jobs.
If Montana Tech wasn't here, the number of retail shops would be less. The number of automobiles sold would be less. The amount of medical services and hotel rooms would be less. Just the fact that Montana Tech is here having an impact of about $74 million creates jobs in the community.
Montana Tech's unique engineering programs, including programs in geophysical and petroleum engineering, have contributed to the school's rising stature and popularity.
It's one of the best schools I've found around for petroleum engineering. I really like the mountains and the program. I talked to a lot of the instructors before I came down here. Seemed very knowledgeable, and that's why I chose here.
Engineering students make an average of $50,000 a year after earning a bachelor's degree, which Tech officials say makes the university an exceptionally good buy. But these graduates rarely get to stay in the area.
Through the years, Butte's always been an exporter of its young to other communities in the state and across the country.
We need to have jobs that allow our college graduates the opportunity to stay if they want to. And right now, a lot of people that would want to stay just don't have that opportunity. And that opportunity is, we see that in Bozeman and Missoula and other areas, but right now we're not seeing as great opportunity in Butte as our college graduates would have with our neighboring cities.
The university's placement services works to keep Tech grads in town if they wish to stay.
We try to place students where they'll be successful and where they'll have the impact that they want to have. And certainly if we can place them in the local community and that's where they want to be, we try to do that. If a new corporation's coming in and they want specific students to come to work for them, we try to foster that through internships and placement.
These are two Montana Tech grads who have managed to put their educations to good use and stay in Butte. Teresa Hayward and Jessica Bertolio have degrees in biological science and now perform cell culture research at one of Butte's fastest growing high-tech companies, Resodyne. Both Hayward and Bertolio had to work hard to get their feet in the door.
I ended up at Resodyne after the owner, Larry Farrar, his wife, Cindy, and daughter, Celeste, were in a craft club that I was in, and they both knew that I had applied several times while I was in school to be an intern here and not had the opportunity. They already had interns and they just didn't really need me at that point. And they had said that they were looking for a biologist, so I applied at that point and finally got a job after probably 2 or 3 times of trying to get a job here.
I applied here at Resodyne in November of 2004, and I just actually got the job in September of 2005. They really want to get, the right people in here for the job, and I was really persistent, constantly calling and bothering people trying to get the job, and it did take a long time, but paid off in the end, so.
The company began as a 2-man operation in the mid-90s, but has since expanded rapidly. At the beginning of 2006, they had a staff of 35 employees working on a multitude of scientific engineering projects.
The nature of the core technologies that exist at Resodyne Corporation is quite diverse. We range all the way from biotech engineering, which includes tissue engineering, drug synthesis, some drug delivery. We also move on into materials work that we have done started off with NASA and are currently doing work for the Air Force in advanced polymeric materials. And then finally, another core technology area we have is a technology that uses sound for mixing rather than props, and that's a technology that we've launched as a product.
The sound mixing technology is Resodyne's most lucrative, a revolutionary process that allows for the safe, effective mixing of rocket fuels, bioreactors, and other materials incompatible with normal mixing. As demand for the mixing technology and other products continues to grow, Resodyne anticipates expanding to 500 employees by 2011. This will mean a great deal more opportunity for people like Hayward and Bertolio.
I think it's pretty good. I'm single. I don't have anyone else except for myself. So for me, I have a pretty good quality of life. I'm just looking for an apartment now for myself, and I feel like I can afford, a pretty nice place for myself.
I only have to work one job. I have a son. My boyfriend goes to school and just works part-time. We both have vehicles that run and are decent and can afford daycare and don't really need a whole lot of assistance with anything. We're currently buying a house. Hopefully it will close next week.
As Residine works to expand its employee base, the company has already expanded its property holdings. In 2005, they acquired office space in the storied Uptown Hennessy building, as well as a new fabrication facility across the street.
Well, the Hennessy building, as most people are aware, was owned at one point by Touch America, and the Hennessy building became available on a distress sale, and so we were able to pick the Hennessy building up at a very good price exactly at the time we were expanding our needs for new space. So it worked out very well for us.
Residine, as well as many other companies and developers, have been reaping the benefits of Butte's low property values, a symptom of the community's long economic drought.
Yeah, I think one of the fortunate aspects, certainly, of us being located in Butte, because of the availability of properties, and we were able to pick up the Hennessy building at a price that we would not have been able to pick it up at any place else in the state, or certainly any place else in the United States.
27-year-old developer and business owner Robert Edwards has taken full advantage of the buyer's market since he came to Butte in 2004.
I was working a 40-hour-a-week job in California, and then I also have an internet business that I was running. So I was really kind of working 16-hour days and couldn't make the ends meet. It just didn't make sense to be there. And I figured that I could come to Montana. In California, rents were so obnoxious that I could come here and own something outright. I mean, we bought this building for what people pay for our commuter car. That's not something you could ever do in some of the coastal cities.
The building Edwards purchased was the Uptown Imperial building for a mere $52,000. He will eventually rent out the building's 2 storefronts and use the second floor for offices for 3 different businesses. He also purchased this adjacent building for all of $5,000. The previous owner had banked on using the building for Destination Montana-related development, but when that tanked, Edwards says the owner felt a panic to sell.
Many of our projects have been complete overhauls, meaning we paid next to nothing for the property, but there was a considerable investment necessary in making the property livable. So it's actually kind of a neat thing because you'll have a 100-year-old house, but it'll have 2005, cable, internet, phone, wiring, modern heating system, but you're living in a beautiful old house that's 100 years old.
Most of Edwards' other purchases have been in real estate where, thanks to the aging population and years of abandoned infrastructure, he's been able to purchase old, vacant homes for dirt cheap.
Number one, we've lost our population at one time was so big that we do have, a great deal of housing that is here. And when it's available, to the extent that it is here, it keeps the price in other areas from going out of sight.
But many prospective buyers in Butte do not want to make the large investment necessary to revamp an old house, even if the base price is very low.
It may be affordable, but there's issues with some of these houses about what condition they're in when you buy them. You got to look into that. And you can buy a house for $5,000 and spend $50,000 bringing it up to, snuff if someone hasn't done that before you. So you need to be careful about, what the price is.
Realizing this problem, the city has recently taken strides to build new subdivisions that would provide new homes at what today would be considered moderate prices.
There's a huge shortage in the types of houses in which families would like to occupy in the 150 to 250 range. There's not any new houses in that range. So next spring, we're seeing that there are 3 new housing developments that are going to be breaking ground and building. So there's a demand out there, and many of the people are from out of town, and that's great. I mean, new citizens into our community, that's what we want to see.
For many out-of-staters making the move to Butte, like Edwards, the cost of living has been a deciding factor.
The living wage here is something like $9.01. That was a huge thing for me. In my internet business, we were paying somebody $15 an hour, and they could barely make it. I come here and I'm paying somebody $10, and they're happy, they're going to be, working for me forever. They own their own house.
As more and more developers follow in Edwards' footsteps, more and more business and infrastructure is being built up in Butte. From growth at the Silicon Mountain Industrial Park west of the city, to growth in the once largely abandoned uptown area, city officials finally have a reason to be optimistic.
The county used to have a big list of buildings in which they receive back because of non-payment of taxes. Those buildings have been purchased and are in the process of being redeveloped. Those are good signs for our community.
While many new businesses have been encouraged to move to Butte, and many old ones have left, a rare few have managed to weather the economic storm for years and years. Today, at the same location it was founded some 90 years ago, Miller's Boots and Shoes continues to thrive. Their story is one of survival.
The business has been able to stay for a number of reasons. One, of course, is as you've been around the store and looked, you see the amount of inventory we keep. We've probably got 20,000 pairs of shoes between the upper level of the store or the basement and out in the garage. So having a vast inventory that a lot of other places don't carry helps us stay in business. The fact that we opened in 1917 and we've been here for 89 years, the building's paid for. We don't have a high overhead. There's no mortgage to pay. A small number of employees, so there's not a lot of payroll costs.
Of course, they now also benefit from being one of only 2 shoe stores in Butte. The business began to segue from shoe repair to shoe sales in the 1930s, and by the early 80s, when store founder Clarence Miller finally retired, they ceased repair altogether.
When you going on your trip?
June. Since then, the store has been run by Miller's grandson-in-law, Dan McElroy. Tim Rogers is the only other full-time employee.
We've been here for a long time. People know us.
Don't let Mojo and Sundance scare you off from Miller's Early Bird Sale.
People know us from our TV ads, our radio ads, and it's not a very high-pressure place. Dan and I are here to help you, but we're not going to push you into a pair of shoes, because if you don't want a pair of shoes, we're not going to sell them to you. And we've kind of gotten a reputation with a lot of people that friends that stop by, advertisers that stop by, as being the closest thing you'll find to a general store left in the country.
Through statewide advertising and a growth in internet-based sales, the store has expanded its customer base well beyond Butte.
Get a lot of people that call us up that have moved to other states, Arizona, Nevada, Washington, Wyoming, Idaho, that used to live here. Their parents worked here. People call us up. Say, I found your name on the Red Wing site, or I found your name on the Wolverine site as a dealer, and I'd like, what do you carry in stock? Do you have my size? And we end up shipping a lot of things UPS to other states.
Just how long the near-century-old business will continue to exist depends entirely on how long the descendants of the Miller family want to keep it afloat.
We always joke around that we're in our 89th year come June, and we want to hit 100. So we're planning on being around for another 11 years. After that, Dan will be in his mid-60s. Mick, the other owner, is already in his mid-60s, so I don't envision both of them wanting to continue very much past that. Dan and his wife have no children. Mick's 3 kids are all in college or out of college, and they haven't shown much of an interest in taking over the company business. Now, whether that'll change in 10 years, I don't know.
Until then, the store will continue to inspire as a great Butte success story. While business growth and Butte's slow ascent out of the economic doldrums have been encouraging, Butte citizens realize they still have a long road ahead. The Butte Chamber of Commerce and the local government have made efforts recently to get the people of Butte on the same page in assessing the future. A series of community forums have been offered, focusing on young people and business owners, and addressing the keys to building and sustaining Butte's economy.
One thing that was pretty loud and clear, we have to clean up and green up our community. If we expect any economic development here, we have to look appealing, to people coming from the outside.
We can't just be a dirty old mining town. People want to live in where there's no potholes and the dogs don't run loose, and all common sense things that we just kind of let get away from us.
While environmental cleanup was the biggest key, the forums also heavily discussed promoting Montana tech, expanding retail, and improving Butte's image across the state. They also exposed an issue the Chamber of Commerce had not considered.
We really don't have a business plan as far as Butte Silver is concerned. Even though when we're recruiting businesses and we ask them to come into our community, the first thing we ask of them is, we need your business plan. What we started to realize is that as a community, we do not have a business plan.
By April 2006, Lusich says the city will have drafted an official business plan for the city. A major tenet of the plan will be to attract more businesses and encourage competition. This idea has been met with resistance by some Butte people who do not want to see the Butte business landscape change.
There's some businesses that really encourage competition and really want competition to come in because they feel that's how we're going to grow. There's other businesses that are very fearful of competition, as far as their industry is concerned, and they don't want anyone else to come in. The comments that we'll hear is, if you bring in another business like mine, you're going to put me out of business.
It's going to be part of this process.
Many in Butte feel that a resistance to change within the community has been a major obstacle to recovery.
There's some that like Butte the way it is. But the interesting thing is, if we really evaluate what's being said, I think if we go back to maybe the census of the 50s or 60s, we probably were somewhere between 45 to 55,000 people. We're down to about 34,000 people. So Butte is not the way it is. We've been a declining population for about 40 years. And if we keep going in the direction we have been going, there won't be anything left here.
I think that when I was elected, it showed that I was the change candidate. I was a young person that was an entrepreneur that had been involved in business, and people saw that. Some of the people that I went up against were seasoned politicians that had been involved in Butte politics forever. And it showed that Butte was ready to take the next step and say, we want to see change. And there are a minority that don't want to see change, but the majority do, and thank God majority rules.
One matter on which most all Butte citizens can agree is the need to preserve the city's rich historical legacy. City leaders began addressing this need in the early 90s when they started working with the National Park Service to turn its uptown area into a historic landmark district.
Oh, it's great. People, their curiosity gets the better of them. They want to pull over and see what's on the little sign out on the front of the building, and when they read it, they're impressed. Butte's got the second largest historical landmark district in the nation, besides New Orleans, and we're not sure, we might even be first now with the tragedy that hit New Orleans, but it's good. Butte's got a great history to tell, and we should tell it.
The push for the historic district was part of a much larger plan to create a historic tourism economy for Butte.
I think tourism is one of our great answers here because of all the elements that we've got here. We've got architecture, we've got mining, we've got mansions, we've got a lot of memories, we've got a lot of stories here. And I think people want to go and visit sites that have got a lot of history, a lot of culture to them. And I think this is a great opportunity for Butte to step forward and show the world what we've got.
Burns' business, Old Butte Historical Adventures, offers tours of many of Uptown Butte's most famous historical sites, and has not only raised tourism dollars, but promoted development as well.
Well, what's really happened last year was our first year offering walking tours and guided tours of our Uptown community. And we had a lot of people after the tours come in, and they're very interested in the community, and they wanted to move here. They wanted to invest in the community. As a matter of fact, we got 2 or 3 people now that are coming back and purchasing buildings, purchasing residences here. So we know what we've done was a good thing.
Butte has pushed hard to promote its wealth of museums in recent years, including the Maiwa Chinese History Museum, the Piccadilly Museum of Transportation, and the World Museum of Mining. And then there are the events.
Some of the things we've been doing the last few years that have been very successful are the festivals that we've developed, we being the community. The Evel Knievel Days in July. There's a statewide Irish festival that happens in August. We have our St. Patrick's Day, which grows every year in March.
The St. Patrick's Day celebration transforms the city every year, bringing in thousands of visitors from across the state and throughout the country. From the parades to the parties, March 17th truly harkens back to the Butte days of wild revelry in the early 20th century. But despite Butte's great potential as a tourist destination, most believe that more can and should be done. Short tourist seasons and an unattractive appearance throughout much of the community has stifled tourism growth.
Yes, I think Butte really drops the ball on tourism. For one thing, you have to go through one of the worst neighborhoods in town to get uptown from the freeway. I think it's really discouraging to walk, to drive the roughly mile and a half to get into the uptown area from the interstate and just drive by endless rows of dilapidated homes. There's a lot more that needs to be done, but I think that people really realize that there's a lot of value in tourism. It's a clean industry, you know, the people are in and they're out. There's no pollution as a result of tourism. And Butte's an amazing place. The story needs to be told better.
If you look at Butte, you know, you can look down and you see we're surrounded by mountains. There's skiing, there's hiking, there's biking, there's all sorts of things. And there's been a lot of investment in things that accommodate amenities for tourists as well as people live here. Tourism is a big part of the puzzle, and Butte could do a lot more in that area.
Currently, Butte does plan to do more, and nothing crystallizes these tourism goals more than a plan in the works to build a tram park at the base of Our Lady of the Rockies. The tram would theoretically open up the great tourism potential of the statue, offering 7-minute rides up to the Lady 10 months of the year. At the Lady of the Rockies' 20th anniversary celebration, Our Lady of the Rockies Foundation President Bob Leipheimer and Paul Babb drummed up support for the project.
It's been 20 great years, and I think that the statue did a lot. And if we can get the tram project going, I think the tram will do what the statue did 20 years ago. What that will do for our community will be tremendous. And it's people just like you, me, and the folks that have worked so hard on this that will make that a reality.
The tram park will include 2 25-passenger cars that will move about 350 people an hour up and down the mountain. A carousel will be built at the base of the tram, and roughly 50 adjacent acres will be developed with ponds, streams, and picnic areas. Tram patrons will be expected to pay $10 per ticket.
Our greatest asset here in Butte is we have 2 interstate systems, north and south with 15, and east and west with Interstate 90. And, you know, it's right at our back door, and if we can utilize more people off that interstate system, it'll be a big boost to us.
We see by having a tram, especially with as many people that drive by our city, if there was a tram that was going from the bottom of the East Ridge all the way up to the top, that a lot of people would get off the highway and say, hey, I want to ride that tram up to the top, and it would really make it more of a destination.
The foundation worked with the Montana Department of Transportation to form an estimate of how many people passing through Butte would be attracted to the tram park.
They all came up with this 10% rule that we're so close to the interchange, and with good access right off the interstates 15 and 90, would get probably 10% of the travel a year, and roughly 2 to 3 million pass this corridor a year. So that might mean 200 to 300,000 more visitors that might stop in Butte that normally just pass us by.
Leipheimer sees the perceived influx of tourism as having a trickle-down effect on the economy and job growth.
I would say with all the retail and extra hotel business and restaurants, anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 maybe extra jobs, you know, in different sectors of the labor force in Butte. And maybe with a spin-off of those, you know, you never know where it ends.
Obstacles to the tram development still exist, however, including legal battles over the property and an uncertain price tag. But Leipheimer is confident that through loans, donations, and city grants, the project will go through within a couple of years.
I'm sure the advance money will come. We get a lot of donations from different estates and different organizations. And once we get through our final decisions on our access to our property, I'm sure they'll be coming in after we get started. And hopefully with the fundraisers from the Lady of the Rockies and donations, we'll have enough to get it started.
It's a risky investment anytime that you're going to take on an undertaking of that size, because it's expensive. But the people of this community, band together when we were probably at our lowest point and put a 90-foot statue up on the East Ridge with unemployed iron workers. So taking a risk and getting a project done is something that Butte is not afraid to do or not to tackle.
Indeed, Butte has not been afraid to take risks. The city hasn't had the luxury to be patient.
To be conservative and that, we just can't afford to do that. We have to go out and be aggressive. So, yeah, we'll try anything once.
Combating environmental problems, an aging population, and dealing with the closures of touchstone companies in the community has been a long and arduous process.
When you go through that phase, it takes, years to do that, because we spent the past hundreds of years defining ourselves as a mining town. Now we had to redefine ourselves as something different. And that's why we were a little bit slower than the rest of the state. But now we're starting to catch up.
Quarterly census figures appear to be proving Babb right. 2005 saw Butte Silverbo's first population increase since the days of the Anaconda Company. From 2002 to 2005, following the Touch America fiasco, employment increased 5.4%, or more than 800 workers. 2005's unemployment rate of 4.7% was the lowest level in Butte since 1973. And by 2007, the Chamber of Commerce predicts Butte's employment level will match the years preceding the Anaconda Company's closure. Butte's gains have been a result of a multitude of economic factors, from small business growth to environmental cleanup to tourism. Mining has become a blip on the radar.
If we were going to survive, we had to do something different than mining. Knowing that mining could always come back, but we couldn't situate ourselves where if mining didn't come back, that we just become a ghost town.
But the spirit and optimism of the mining culture that defined Butte for so many years has never left. Butte continues to bank on that spirit to attract new blood into the city. And slowly, this is happening.
I'll die here. Yeah. I like it here. It's this place where you can go down the street and have a dinner, and you got one side is there's, an executive from Northwestern Energy, and the other side there's an old miner whose bones are broken and he's tired. And they're both happy, and they both have, they're sitting side by side.
Mining is not the only thing going on here, but we're still damn proud of it. We're kind of changing our focus from the value of the ores beneath our city to the value of the people within our community, and I think it's going to pay great dividends.
I had an Irishman ask me this on an interview. He says, what's going to bring the economy back? I said, what brought it back to Ireland? The economy's around the corner, we just have to find it.
Butte, Montana is the richest hill on earth, and it'll always be the richest hill on earth.